So today we have a steak and potatoes recipe. We're going to do it with a bit of kale as well. So we got a pound ribeye steak. We got 5 cloves of garlic and 3 sprigs of rosemary. We have 2 shallots, salt, pepper, half a cup of heavy cream. We got 1 cup of vegetable stock. We have 1.5 pounds of fingerling potatoes, and we have a half a bunch of kale. So today you'll need a medium pot, a small pot, a large saucepan, and a cast iron skillet. So the way we're cooking the steak today is called a reverse sear. That means we're going to cook it at a low temperature in the oven first. We want to cook it internally before we get a hard crust on it with the cast iron pan. So we're only going to cook it in the pan for about a minute or 2. So we're going to use this to flavor the butter, and we're going to actually baste that onto the top of the steak. Okay, so for the steak, you're going to want to leave this on your counter and salt it for about half an hour to 45 minutes just to get it up to room temperature. This makes sure that you're not cooking it from cold and you're going to get a more even cook on it. So once we do that, we're going to put the steak into the oven at a fairly low temperature. This one's at 300, and we're also going to put the cast iron in at the same time to warm it up. We're going to leave the steak in the oven at 300 degrees for about half an hour. So next step is we're going to start the potatoes from cold water. I'm going to heavily salt this with some coarse kosher salt. And we're going to let that go into a boil on a medium high, and then we're going to cook that for anywhere from 25 to 30 minutes. Wow. See you soon. So we're just going to start the shallots on like a medium low, and we just want to kind of get these soft. And this is going to be for the potatoes. So put like a couple tablespoons of grapeseed oil. And we're going to start these from cold as well because we don't want them crispy, we just want them soft. Okay, so we're just going to put the vegetable stock onto a low simmer in the small saucepan. And that'll be for the potatoes later. Potatoes are done. So now we just strain them. And we're going to wait for those to cool down a bit.
Yum.
So now that the cast iron has been preheated, we're going to turn this onto medium heat. So the steak doesn't look like much right now, it's kind of gray and unappealing, but we just wanted to cook it through the middle. So now we're going to take it into the cast iron and we're going to sear it quite hard on each side for about a minute or 2. So for this you're going to want to get your garlic and rosemary, butter, a flipping utensil, and a big spoon at the ready. So one thing to note when you're doing anything with a cast iron pan that's been preheated, you want to keep a kitchen towel on the handle at all times just so that nobody burns himself. These things can retain heat very well and you don't want to burn your hands on this, trust me. We're going to add a couple glugs of oil and wait till that gets smoky. If you got a vent, you want to turn it up. So steak. And lots of butter. You want to melt that butter, move it around, and what you're going to do is you're going to tilt the pan here. I'm just going to baste that flavored butter. So you're going to let that go for a minute. Like I said, we're only going to flip this once because it's already cooked in the center. take the steak off, that's done. And you always want to rest your steak for half as long as you cooked it. So we cooked this in the oven for half an hour, and we cooked it in the pan for about 4 or 5 minutes. So we want to rest this for at least 15 minutes. The juices in the mussel are moving around right now after you cook it. And if you cut into it right now, that'll all kind of spill out. So you want to let that kind of ease out a bit. And it's also still cooking even after you take it off the pan. So by covering it, we let the internal temperature get perfect, and you just make sure that you're not losing any juices when you get into it. So we're going to add the potatoes to the onions. These have been cooking for about 10 to 15 minutes.
Oh.
And at this point you want to salt and pepper these. Also going to add a bit of butter in here. So you could have it as is right now, and that's more of a mashed potato, but what I'm going for is a bit more of a sauce-like consistency. So like I said, we're going to add the liquids that we have, the half cup of cream and 1 cup of vegetable stock. Slowly and bit by bit. So we got the 1 cup of vegetable stock, we're going to add about half of it right now. Just to make sure it doesn't get too clumpy. You want to slowly work that in. You can see that's going to loosen up the potatoes, and that's what we're looking for. And that's also why we added the vegetable stock while it's hot, because if you add it while it's cold, it's going to clump up. We're going to add the rest of the vegetable stock now. You can see how creamy and velvety that's getting. But it's still a bit lumpy, so I'm actually going to get a potato masher and mix this up a bit more with that. So I'm going to raise the heat to about a medium because we're going to add a room temperature and a cold ingredient. And like I said, we don't want it to clump up. So I'm going to add about 1.5 tablespoons of butter. And maybe a bit more if necessary. And just the cream touch by touch, because like I said, it's cold and we don't want it to clump. Bit more butter, bit more cream, and I think this guy's good right there. So that's how I like it. It's not quite liquefied, and it's not quite mashed potatoes. So I'm just gonna kill the heat. And we're gonna do a taste for seasoning. And that needs a touch more salt. Okay, mashed potatoes done. Okay, so we're going to use the same cast iron pan to cook the kale. So just so the butter doesn't burn, and because the pan is so hot, you want to also add a little bit of grapeseed oil. And have your salt and pepper handy to season this. It's going to crackle a lot, so you might want to turn on your vent again. All that water is coming out. Kale holds a lot of moisture, as do most greens, like spinach or broccoli. So we just want to cook that liquid out, wilt it, and it's going to reduce by about half. You can also use some salt to get the moisture out as well. So you can see it's already starting to turn bright green where it's hitting the heat. And this only needs about 3 to 5 minutes, the way I like it. So I can see the parts that are bright green, those are the ones that are starting to wilt and the moisture is starting to come out. You can see the more raw parts like on this leaf here. So stuff like that, you just want to get the bright green stuff on top. So you just want to make sure everything's a bright green, but you don't want to overcook it. If it starts to get too damp and soggy, then you've overcooked it. Not a big deal, but just not the texture I like. So I'm going to call it right there. You can see we reduced by about half. There's a little snap, crackle, and pop. I still want a little bit of moisture in there. It's gonna kill the heat and get that in servable. Okay, so we have our final products here. We got our pureed potatoes, we have our reverse seared ribeye steak, and we have our butter poached kale. So to carve this up, just gonna remove all the aromatics. I'm gonna start from this end, cut on a bias. You got a perfect meat rare in there. You can see we got a beautiful blushing pink in there. To plate, I'm gonna get a big scoop. Your mash, lay it all on one end. You just gonna kind of spread it out. Get your knife. Transfer your steak onto it. Give it a little bit of fan out. Get a little bit of your kale. Just gonna set that on the side. Just a touch kosher salts on the steak. Et voila. You can also return your aromatics to the occasion here. So we have our butter poached kale, reverse seared ribeye steak, and pureed potatoes. Enjoy.